From Borz showing why he's so dangerous for everyone involved to a flawless fight card happening this summer, these are last-minute changes to fight cards that changed everything. There's no way I can talk about insane last-minute changes without mentioning UFC 279's main card. Last-minute card changes can happen due to nasty injuries, visa issues, or even missed weight. But a main event falling through days before fight night is still extremely rare. And if it does happen, the promotion has to scramble and act fast to make sure they line something up, or fans will be seriously pissed. And that's exactly what happened at UFC 279's main event after Khamzat Chimaev missed weight by a lot and threw the whole event into total chaos. That fight week was one of a kind, but things worked out when Tony Ferguson stepped up to fight Nate Diaz in a new co-headline slot. It's one of the most recent examples of a UFC event dealing with last-minute changes after a messy weigh-in. UFC 279's top 3 bouts were completely rearranged, and the wild buildup and hype surrounding the card was nuts. Initially, Khamzat and Nate's welterweight fight was slated to be the main event, with a co-headliner between Tony Ferguson and Li Jingliang. On the prelim card was a 180-pound catchweight fight between Kevin Holland and Daniel Rodriguez, but just 2 days before the event, Dana canceled the press conference. This spelled big trouble. Turns out this was all because of an apparent fight backstage involving Chimaev, Diaz, Holland, and multiple other fighters, but no one could have predicted what would happen next. Borz came into the weigh-in way over the welterweight limit, tipping the scales at 178.5 pounds. This put his battle with Diaz in danger and, in a sense, the entire event on the line. But Dana and the promotion's CEO Hunter Campbell pulled through in a big way. I'll be honest, it's still unclear how they managed to convince everyone to agree, but they rearranged the fights to try and save the situation. It was a clever move since Ferguson and Diaz competed in the welterweight main event, giving the Stockton native a submission to end his UFC career with a bang. Surprisingly, the gamble paid off in a huge way. Why? Because the fans who didn't want to see Nate get mauled were happy with the switch, and don't forget, Holland and Borz already had a rivalry stemming from their backstage brawl. In the end, the event was a successful one, with Chimaev kicking Holland's ass in the first round and submitting him with a Darce choke. And because of Khamzat's failure to make weight, he now acts like a proper villain in the promotion. The main event, on the other hand, featured some mutual respect and gave 2 veterans a chance to flex their skill set. And let's be real, the UFC couldn't have gotten workout any better than this, and the same can be said for UFC 234. This event was set to feature former champ Robert Whittaker, who would have been defending his title in his home country against Kevin Gastelum. In a shocking turn of events, Whittaker was diagnosed with a hernia, forcing him out of the fight, but the event was still headlined by 2 of the greatest middleweights ever, Israel Adesanya and former middleweight champ Anderson Silva, who were hungry and amped up and ready to beat the hell out of each other as the new faces of the main event. But unfortunately, because it was a last-minute fight, it was only a 3-round fight. Adesanya won by decision and went on to defeat Gastelum and Whittaker on his way to gold. The rest, as they say, is history. I wouldn't be any good at my job if I didn't talk about how Amanda Nunes shocked the world at UFC 215. Amanda Nunes vs. Valentina Shevchenko 2 was the UFC's first event ever held in Edmonton, Canada, with a flyweight title fight lined up for the main event. Demetrius Johnson and Ray Borg were set to square off for the 125-pound championship, but a few days before the event, the Tasmexican Devil was deemed medically unfit to compete. So the main event was changed to a women's bantamweight title fight, and not just any women, 2 of the all-time best female MMA fighters in the world. When Amanda and Valentina faced off for the second time, everyone knew they were in store for an explosive matchup. And in the end, Amanda was victorious with a split decision victory, solidifying her position as the top female fighter in the organization at the time. All title runs have to start somewhere, and for Jamal Hill, it was in 2022 when he faced against Johnny Walker inside the octagon. At first, the lightweight brawl was all set. But due to Rafael Fiziv's visa troubles, the fight between him and Rafael dos Anjos was rescheduled for a later time. Because of this, the bout between light heavyweights Johnny Walker and Jamal Hill was promoted to the main event. In a spectacular showing, Hill dispatched Walker in the first round, kicking off his journey to the top. Visa troubles are one thing, but what about an event that's so scary it haunts you? Now would be a great time to cue some spooky Halloween sound effects. Joe Rogan infamously labeled UFC 177 the haunted event. But not because ghouls and goblins were running around, it was due to the fact that the event saw multiple fights changed or scrapped, with the biggest change happening on the day of the weigh-ins. After the UFC was forced to scrap the rematch between Jon Jones and Alexander Gustafsson, the main event was supposed to feature a highly anticipated rematch between former bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw and Renan Barão. But only 4 hours before the event's official weigh-in, it was announced that Barão wouldn't be able to compete. Fans suspected it was the brutal weight-cutting process, but they later learned that Barão knocked himself out while climbing out of a bathtub. I mean, it's funny and it's not, but I guess if you're gonna get KO'd, it's better to do it in the privacy of your own home than in the octagon in front of millions of people. But now the UFC had a serious problem on its hands, and they were forced to think fast and act even faster. In a gutsy last-minute call, they brought in Joe Soto. Soto was supposed to face Anthony Burchak in a prelim bout, and now he had to face Dillashaw for the title. This put Soto in a very special club, and he was now among only a handful of fighters to compete for a title in their debut. Repeat after me, insane. But despite the unique horror, Soto couldn't break through, and Dillashaw dealt with him via TKO in the 5th round. And as for Barão, he eventually got his rematch with Dillashaw, but unfortunately he got TKO'd. I wonder what hurt more for Barão, getting knocked out by Dillashaw or getting knocked out after tumbling out of the bathtub. But not all of the UFC's cards get messed up and restructured with last-minute changes. In fact, some cards are flawless. On July 8th, 2023, UFC 290's gonna punch its way to the T-Mobile Arena in Paradise, Nevada, for Volkanovski versus Rodriguez. It'll also feature an absolute banger between Sean Brady and welterweight prospect Jack Della Maddalena. Maddalena made his mark on Dana White's Contender Series in late 2021, and he's been giving us stunning performances ever since. Brady's rebounding from the first loss of his MMA career after getting TKO'd by Bilal Muhammad. Brady came to the UFC with full power, going on a 5-fight win streak with a pair of submission finishes, putting away big names and veterans like Court McGee and Michael Chiesa. And if UFC 290's fight card doesn't change, ladies and gentlemen, we're in for a hell of a treat. Not only is Volkanovski defending his belt against Yair Rodriguez, but Brandon Moreno's returning to kick the S out of his long-term rival, Alexander Patoa. 2 championship fights in one night? Yes, please. So there you have it, fight fans. From a flawless fight card happening this summer to Borz showing why he's dangerous for everyone involved, those were last-minute changes to fight cards that changed everything.